Welcome back. Israel continues to hammer Iranian nuclear sites to disable the country's atomic capabilities. So far, it's launched dozens of strikes on these facilities you see in the northern and north-central parts of the country. It includes the one that is most concerning to everyone, Fordo. That site is buried deep in a mountain, about 300 feet below ground, some 60 miles outside Tehran. Taking out that facility will require a much bigger bomb than Israel has in its arsenal. The president's considering deploying a U.S. bunker buster bomb. It is capable of penetrating 200 feet underground before detonation. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin explains. Hey, Jen.
Hi, Jackie. Well, we've just learned that the USS Nimitz, the aircraft carrier strike group, will be arriving in the Middle East this weekend. That's significant in terms of any potential strike on Fordo, because on board are not only dozens of warplanes and up to 5,000 sailors, but also the very important EF-18 Growler electronic warplanes that are needed if you were to fly the B-2s over Iran. Now, here at the Pentagon, there is little doubt whether the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, or MOP, could destroy Iran's Fordo nuclear facility, buried, as you said, 300 feet under a mountain complex with layers of limestone and dolomite rock, which geologists call nature's own bomb shelter. Shown here during a test in 2018 and developed by the Air Force specifically to address Iran and North Korea's underground nuclear sites, the MOP was designed to penetrate 200 feet underground. Further, if two missiles are dropped via GPS positioning into the same hole.
Does it have the capacity, if it's employed the correct way, to have the effect inside the mission space? Absolutely.
Retired Navy Captain Todd Sawhill oversaw the Defense Department's targeting operations, advising 5 CENTCOM commanders and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs on weapons like the MOP.
You can use a multiple hit scenario so that you have multiple impacts in the same point. You'll create a large crater, spoil will be thrown out, and it allows a pathway for the next munition to go in even deeper and farther, so that successive hits on the same point will allow increased penetration and increased lethality.
All eyes now on Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, home to the B-2 stealth bomber. The U.S. is the only military in the world with the capability to strike this buried program with a conventional weapon using its B-2 bombers, which can fly at 50,000 feet, carrying 2 massive 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. There are 2 entrances to Fordo.
If they wanted to go after the portal entrances, it's likely that they would use 2 B-2s for each portal entrance, so it could drop 2 bombs per portal.
The B-2s fly with a significant air escort for protection. It's a 30-hour round trip to the Mideast from Whiteman that requires a massive air refueling bridge. That is why the Pentagon ordered dozens of refuelers to bases in the UK and the Middle East. Lieutenant General Mark Wetherington is a former B-2 pilot and served as deputy commander of the Air Force Global Strike Command.
There'll be dozens of tanker aircraft supporting it. There'll be electronic attack and command and control missions and all sorts of support to this type of a mission. And so it's a very complex mission.
The mission, General Wetherington says, will rely on the quality of the intelligence about the Fordo site. Jackie?
Jennifer Griffin, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, some opinion pieces highlight the potentially historic choices the president faces in his decision-making. The New York Post editorial board with "Keep the focus on stopping Iran's nukes. Regime change is too risky a game." And Karl Rove writes in the Wall Street Journal, "Trump's clarity on Iran and the questions that remain, he hasn't wavered in his view that Tehran can't have nuclear weapons. Now he'll have to decide what to do about it." Michael Allen is a former special assistant to the president and senior national security director under President George W. Bush. Michael, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So you just heard Jennifer Griffin's report, and it sounded to me like the assets that are moving in that direction would allow the president, if he so chooses, to take some kind of an action within the next week or so, even though the White House has said that he'll make a decision on whether to strike in the next 2 weeks. What do you see happening here? Do you think there's really a chance for diplomacy?
I think the president wants to leave the door ajar for diplomacy. I think he would like nothing more than for the Iranians to just sort of cry uncle and understand that they may be risking the health and security of their regime if this continues and if the United States were to intervene. However, in the end, I think Donald Trump will be worried about some sort of onerous verification process that may result if there is a diplomatic deal, because the Iranians have such a history of obscuring what they're up to, diverting nuclear material. Don't forget, Fordow and Natanz in the past were secret facilities that they did not declare. So there's a lot of baggage associated with trying to trust the Iranians. We still want a diplomatic solution, but at the end of the day, because we're already in the middle of a military conflict, it may be just that the best option is to go ahead and strike Fordow.
All of their defiant rhetoric, too, about never surrendering, I'm sure gives some people some questions. But meantime, the former Secretary of State for the president in his first term, Mike Pompeo, titled his new op-ed, "Israel is doing the world a favor. Now the U.S. must give any help necessary to end Iran's nuclear threat." And this morning, he added this.
It is time to put this to rest, to get all of the enrichment out of Iran, to finally put Israel in a place where it can be secure, and most importantly for the American people, to make sure that we are safe and we don't have to live under the threat of a nuclear-armed Iranian regime that has for years talked about death to our nation and done everything it can to facilitate that.
So let's say he does choose to strike Fordow. What happens next? What else does the U.S. have to be ready to support?
So I think that the Iranians will definitely strike us back. They will attempt to hit our bases in the region with short-range ballistic missiles. I think we would become even more than we already are in the crosshairs of their terrorist infrastructure. So I know that the president is weighing this in terms of a cost-benefit analysis. There's a reason why we've sent so much personnel, so many planes to the region, not just to support the B-2, but also to help shoot down any projectiles that the Iranians may send at Americans in the region. So the question really is, there will be blowback, but can we mitigate it? Can we do well enough by setting the theater with enough defensive weaponry as to sort of make the Iranians pause and think to themselves, if we hit the United States, or at least try to, we're just inviting even a greater series of airstrikes from the United States.
Obviously, there's concern about U.S. assets that are in the region, but there's also the question of if anything could happen here in the homeland. We had this comment from a former White House chief information officer and current CEO of a cybersecurity firm. Listen here.
If they are running out of weaponry and missiles, they could resort to cyber incidents and cyber attacks. Everything from everyday citizens to U.S. elected officials, media outlets, as well as critical infrastructure. They're going to look for something that might be high impact. Look at the control systems for energy, utilities, water, cyber vandalism, distributed denial of service attacks, sending tons and tons of internet traffic to websites, whether it's government agencies, media, or critical infrastructure such as financial services.
Should the federal government be doing anything right now to maybe guard against that, communicate that risk to public or private entities? Definitely.
And the National Security Agency, not just the electronic eavesdroppers for the country, but the ones that run Cyber Command, also have a mission to defend forward. They're allowed to get on foreign intelligence networks, be it telephonic or the like, and try and ensure that there are no attacks that head our way and or land here in the United States. The Iranians may be able to get through, so we do need to be vigilant in terms of our cyber defenses, but we're not powerless when it comes to trying to neuter these attacks before, or at least during, the Iranian attempt to hit us.
All right. It is a tense time, high stakes. Thank you so much for your expertise, as always, Michael Allen. Appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.